My name is Mia Bennett. I am 35 years old. At Christmas dinner, my sister raised her champagne glass and announced to the entire family, "You're 35 and still single? Must be tough spending Christmas alone." My mother laughed. "She's just joking," she said. A cousin at the end of the table slowly lowered his phone, realizing the family joke he'd been recording had just turned into something else entirely. The clink of cutlery stopped. A few relatives glanced at each other, uncomfortable, while others looked at their plates, waiting to see whether they should keep laughing or brace for something else. I set my glass down. "Don't worry about me. I've been married for a long time." The room froze. My sister's smile collapsed. My father stared as if he'd missed an entire chapter of his own life. Someone asked who my husband was. I looked at the glossy redevelopment proposal beside my mother's plate, the one they'd spent 6 months preparing for an investor they believed could save their failing business. "You already know his name. You've been begging for a meeting with him since June." My family owned a historic restoration company, founded by my grandfather with 2 employees and a borrowed truck. Over 3 generations, Bennett and Rowe had polished its name until it gleamed. But behind the prestige were overdue invoices, expensive loans, and a golden child sister, Vanessa, who turned my work into her authority while my mother smiled and my father looked the other way. I was the dependable daughter they forgot until the next crisis. I became an acoustics consultant. They called it sound decorating, mocked it, until they needed my reports, my contacts, or my silence. I met Grant Mercer, a structural engineer, during the restoration of an abandoned 1930s broadcast house. The place smelled of old plaster and forgotten music. We argued about a ceiling. He came back the next morning with revised calculations and 2 cups of coffee. That became our rhythm: challenge, evidence, respect. We married quietly in a small archive reading room. 11 guests. Lemon cake. No family. I wore my ring on a chain, hidden. They never noticed. My father carefully picked up the phone as if the image might vanish. My mother's face moved through disbelief, hurt, and calculation. But Vanessa barely glanced at the photograph. Her eyes locked onto the proposal beneath my hand. "Does he know about the Orpheum project?" "Not, are you happy?" I opened the document to page 14. My acoustic analysis, my diagrams, my confidential work, all inserted into their investor package, my copyright removed, a forged digital signature claiming I was their lead technical advisor. I had agreed to nothing. My mother reached for the proposal. "Whatever happened, we can correct it privately." Then my phone vibrated. "Grant." I put him on speaker. My mother used her donor voice. "Grant, this is Elaine Bennett. There's been a serious misunderstanding." "A written representation supported by false documentation is not a misunderstanding," Grant said calmly. "My wife's feelings did not create the discrepancies. Her professional integrity is the reason one was identified. Our committee will issue formal notice. Until then, cease using Mia's name, reports, or credentials in any way. Preserve all drafts. Further questions through counsel." The word wife landed harder than the photograph. It filled every corner of the silent dining room. My mother's face crumpled. Then she said what she always said, "Mia, you have to fix this." I stood up. "No. For once, the person who created the problem will have to carry it." This was years in the making. Vanessa had stolen my theater designs before, removed my logo, and entered them into an awards competition under her name. When I found out, my mother begged me not to report it. Public embarrassment could cost jobs. Vanessa cried and called the stolen images placeholders. I agreed not to file a complaint. Weeks later, my mother told relatives I'd nearly destroyed the company over a formatting error. That was when I stopped confusing piece with repair. In the hallway that Christmas night, my father handed me a folder. It contained a list of personal guarantors for their failing loans. My name was on it, described as a family principal with substantial outside income. A note read, MIA will come around once Grant is committed. I had never been an owner. I had never signed anything. Vanessa appeared, bitter and cornered. What do you want, Mia? My resignation? Do you want me to kneel? I want you to stop asking what performance will make consequences disappear. She laughed. You finally have the powerful husband and perfect career. You get to stand above everyone. There it was, the resentment beneath years of jokes. Not concern that I was alone, fear that I was not. I never needed to stand above you, I said. I needed you to stop standing on me. 3 days later, Mercer Civic ended negotiations. Not because of our marriage, the submission itself was built on false documents and forged signatures. The city suspended the company. The bank refused to extend their deadline. My mother came to my office with a thick binder labeled Family Continuity Plan. She had worked on it for days, its pages full of charts and projections. It proposed Grant purchase 49% of the company, assume debt, and keep Vanessa in charge, while I worked for a family rate and publicly called the forged signature a misunderstanding. She slid it across my desk with trembling hands, as if this plan were a gift I should be grateful to receive. I refused. I offered only one path, court-supervised restructuring, employees paid, Vanessa resigned with a public correction, and the company name removed from the building. My mother called it punishment. She invoked my grandfather's memory, the borrowed truck, the decades of family pride. I said, punishment would be using my marriage to destroy you. I am refusing to use it to protect you from documented choices. They filed for restructuring. An employee cooperative purchased the assets, and 36 of 43 workers kept their jobs. My father gave me a signed declaration clearing my name and a letter of apology, the first one that contained no instructions for me. He wrote that he had confused peace with silence for too long, and that seeing my courage made him ashamed of his own passivity. My mother, months later, sat through my lecture on acoustic accessibility in public buildings. Afterward she waited until the room emptied and said, I watched you for 40 minutes. I realized I don't actually know what you do. The way we talked about you made it easier not to notice. Then she added, quietly, I also realized the jokes were never about you. They were about protecting the daughter whose flaws I didn't want to see. That small admission was not full reconciliation, but it was a beginning, a door opened only as wide as I allowed. Vanessa sent a formal correction to every relevant authority, admitting she had used my work without permission. Privately she wrote, I kept thinking if people saw you as lonely, they would stop seeing me as less capable. I was wrong about what that did to you and what it made me. I acknowledged it through my attorney. Meaningful words do not demand immediate access. 1 year later, Grant and I invited 11 people to that same archive reading room. My father came. My mother asked if she was included, she was. That evening, I wore my wedding ring on my hand instead of the chain around my neck. My father noticed first. My mother smiled without a speech. Grant touched my fingers beneath the table, and I felt a quiet peace I had once believed I would never deserve. I once believed family peace meant preventing discomfort. Now I know peace built on one person's silence is only convenience for everyone else. Love does not require unlimited access. Forgiveness does not erase accountability. A joke that repeatedly targets the same wound is not humor, it's a test of how much disrespect the room will permit. When I remember my sister asking if it was hard to spend Christmas alone, I no longer hear the laughter first. I remember the quiet after I set down my glass. I'd been married for a long time. But what I was really telling them was this, I've had a full life for a long time. You simply never looked closely enough to see it. And if someone you love keeps reducing your life to a joke, ask yourself, are you protecting the relationship, or the version of you that makes it easy for them? Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to remain available for disrespect, build a life no one can borrow without permission, and let the truth collect every consequence you were once expected to prevent. Have you ever protected a version of yourself that made someone else comfortable? Share your story in the comments, I'd genuinely like to hear it.